You know, I'm not as dumb as you look.
Now I'm a fellow with a heart of gold and the ways of a gentleman. I've been told the kind of a guy that wouldn't even harm a flea. But if me and a certain character met, that guy that invented the cigarette, I'd murder that son of a gun in the first degree. Now, not 'cause I don't smoke myself, and I don't reckon they'll harm your health. I've smoked all my life and ain't dead yet. But nicotine slaves are all the same. At a petting party or a poker game, everything must stop while they smoke that cigarette. Smoke, smoke, smoke that cigarette. Puff, 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 and if you smoke yourself to death, tell St. Peter at the Golden Gate that you hate to make him wait, but you've just got to have another cigarette. Smoke, smoke, smoke.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Mojave Patrol. We're right on the cusp of a big rainstorm. It's supposed to be here tonight. Actually, they said it was going to start raining around 6, which is 40 minutes ago, and I haven't seen any sign of rain. It's there we go. It's approximately 64 degrees outside, Fahrenheit, and I'll put the right over here. I'll put the temperature in Kelvin right in here, and it's about very high humidity, very high, 75%. 75% humidity right now, and as some of you people who follow me know, because you follow me on Facebook and things like that, and TikTok, that yesterday was my 70th birthday, and I went out to dinner, and kind of stayed up late. But for my 70th birthday, I was going to give myself a treat, and that treat was a cigar I got called Red Meat Lovers, right here. Red Meat Lovers. And it was not cheap. And this particular style of cigar by this company is called the Porterhouse. So we're going to see how that is. We're going to review this Red Meat Lover cigar. The cap is a knot. It's tied in a knot right here. I have a cup of coffee in my travel mug. It's called Tank. And this is the very first travel mug I ever bought for myself. I've had this 25 years, maybe longer. It was a novelty thing. I think when I bought it, there were only 2 in the store, and there was this green one, and there was one that was blue, so this green one came home with me. That's good coffee. And And I got a bottle of Grand Old Par right here. Grand Old Par. Grand Old Par is 12-year-old Scotch. It is a blended whiskey. It was made, it's made from a brewery, it's made in a brewery or distillery founded by a guy named Thomas Parr, and he's in Westminster Abbey. His crypt is in Westminster Abbey. He's been there for 152 years. Extra rich. And it says on the back that if you drink it, you'll go blind. You should never fly the airplane. Do not operate a nuclear submarine, and that type of stuff. Your kids are going to be born with 4 legs and fur and pointy ears and whiskers and all that other crap. So first, before we crack open Old Par, let's get this cigar ready. I bought this cigar in the summer. Been in my humidor ever since. My new-to-me knife. Let's get that knot off there very carefully. That is a nice even draw. A very nice even draw. Very smooth. That is a rich, mild cigar. A rich, mild cigar. Very, very good. Very, very good. Let's think on this for a bit. It's going to be a little bit of a serious video. You're not going to have a bunch of crazy special effects. You're not going to have Three Stooges drinking sounds. You're not going to have, you know. Because this is kind of a serious day. I turned 70 years old yesterday. Now you're hearing this from a guy that never thought he was going to be 30. I honestly didn't believe I was going to make it to 30. Yet here I am, 70. And I'm very fortunate to be here. I've had a lot of really bad things happen to me. I've been shot at, I've been shot. I've been in 2 relatively serious car accidents, neither of which were my fault. Both times I was a passenger. One I was with a buddy and went over 100 and some odd foot cliff, and I was ejected from the car through the windshield. And the other I was asleep in a car driving up a winding mountain road in the middle of the night when somebody came around a curve, a blind curve on the wrong side of the road, and hit us head on. I've fallen off a 40-foot tower. I've been hit in the head by a solid steel 5-shiv block, hoist block that blew off the hoist and hit me dead in the face. Let's say a lot of things have happened. I'm very fortunate to be here. And why am I fortunate in this respect? In another respect? I'll tell you why. I don't know how old any of you people are out there who are watching me. Some of you could be older. Some of you could be younger. I was born way back in 1954. I was born dead in the middle of the last century, when jet planes were still kind of a new thing. You know? And any kind of rocket that NASA was going to send up, they didn't know if it was going to leave the pad. As a matter of fact, America's first satellite wasn't launched until I was 3. Really dependable transcontinental and international jet passenger service wasn't really a thing until I was 8 or 9. And you know, you've heard this before. TV had 3 channels. And a lot of shows were live. And I'll tell you why I was lucky. Because I would watch TV when I was a kid. Like a lot of kids did then. We loved TV. There were cartoons, really old cartoons, silent cartoons from the 20s, cartoons from the 20s and 30s and 40s. We watched the Three Stooges on television when Three Stooges on TV was new. The Three Stooges shorts weren't new, but them being on television was new. The Merry Mailman, Officer Joel Bolton, Romper Room. Those are East Coast shows. Colonel Bleep. And here on the West Coast, Hobo Kelly, Mr. Wishbone, you know, Soupy Sales, Captain Kangaroo. The real early days of children's television. When children's television was good, you had people like Engineer Bill, and you had people like Sheriff John, who wanted kids to learn how to be decent, polite human beings. And you ask anybody who knew them, and they did not give a hoot what color that kid was. As a matter of fact, in the late 50s, Hopalong Cassidy, the Western star, punched the manager of a Sears in the face because he told Hoppy that they were going to segregate the kids. Let the white kids come in first, and then the black kids. And Hoppy's response was a punch in the face. And punch that guy in the face. So for all you young people who think that people in those days were totally racist. You're wrong. Because I lived it. Now, my grandmother was born in Tsarist Russia. And she told me. In Russia, there were two kinds of people. People with money and dirt. If you didn't have money, you were discriminated against. And she taught me never to discriminate against people. And this is back in 1956, 57, 58. She didn't believe in that. And then when the communists took over, her father, my great-grandfather, fought on the losing side, and they had to leave. They finally managed to get out of Russia sometime in the 20s. A lot of young people today are never going to have the privilege of being alive, living in the same lifetime as Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer and Enrico Fermi and John Glenn and Gus Grissom and Scott Carpenter and Jack Benny and Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and George Burns and Jackie Gleason and Red Skelton and Danny Kaye and Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe and Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather and Chet Huntley and David Brinkley, Edward R. Murrow, Abbott Costello, Laurel and Hardy, and of course the Three Stooges. Now, Shemp and Curly died around the time I was a year or two old. But I used to watch TV shows where they'd be guest stars. Hell, I watched Groucho Marx, You Bet Your Life, live on television. Groucho Marx had a TV show on when I was a kid. Jack Benny, the great comedian who was voted by his peers to be the greatest comedian of the 20th century. I remember one year, my parents both worked, and they would drop me off at my grandmother's house. And she would babysit me when they went to work. So I'd have to get up really early. They'd drop me off in the morning, and then my grandmother would get me ready, and then I would go to school. And I remember one day, they dropped me off, and I was sitting in her kitchen, and she made me a little breakfast and said, "You're not going to school today." And I'm like, "What? You're not going to school today. Today's an important day." And she took me into the living room and turned on the TV. Something that never happened at her house. Daytime TV, you didn't watch that. You'd go outside and play. That's how that worked. If you were thirsty, you drank out of the hose. If you had to pee, you peed outside. You didn't come in the house unless it was lunchtime or it was important. But anyway, I digress here a little bit. So I sat on the sofa. She turned on the TV, and she turned on the news, and there talking to me out of the TV set was Walter Cronkite in the morning. And why was this important? Because John Glenn was going to take off and orbit the Earth. And she said, "Billy, I want you to remember this day the rest of your life. They're going to put a man in that spaceship and send him up in a space capsule, and he's going to orbit the Earth for the first time, the first American." She told me a story. I don't know how true it was, but this is the story I heard. When she and her two older siblings, my great uncle and great aunt, Anna and Alexander, got to New York from Ellis Island, they were walking down the street, and they were trying to find the address of a relative that they were going to stay with. And they were kind of lost. And across the street, there was a policeman standing there watching them be bewildered. Now, they didn't speak English. And I remember my grandmother saying, the policeman crossed the street in his big long blue coat and his peaked cap, carrying his nightstick. And they were terrified. Because I'll tell you who, in Stalinist Russia, when the cops walk up to you, you were afraid. You were afraid. And he stopped, and my great-grandfather said something to him in Russian. And she said, the police officer laughed and spoke to my great-grandfather in perfect Russian. Can I help you? Can I help you? Yeah, I'm getting a little choked up. And from that point on, they thought of America as the can I help you country. Not for what the government could do for them, like Kennedy said, but what the people of this country did for them. Now, all you youthful people can sit out there and judge and critique, all you armchair historians. Well, let me tell you, you may think that all these guys from the 40s and 50s and 60s, all these old white men walk around with what you say had a stick up their ass. You don't understand why they were like that. And I can tell you very succinctly in a way you can understand it. A lot of those guys were World War II veterans. A lot of them. Millions. 11, 12 million. Guys who put astronauts on the moon. Guys who flew airliners. Guys who drove buses. Guys who worked in factories. Guys who mowed the lawn. Just guys. And a lot of women. And they traveled the world and saw firsthand what unbridled socialism and communism did to the earth. Millions of people dead. Whole cities burned to the ground. Tens of millions of people homeless. Lives destroyed. And they came back here and they said, it's not gonna happen here. So yeah, maybe they were strict with their kids. Maybe they are conservatives. But that's why. You know, there's an old story. A liberal is a conservative. A liberal is a conservative who's been arrested, and a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. They wanted the world to be clean, and fresh and better than the world they had. They wanted the kids to live in a better world. They wanted to teach their kids to be better human beings. And yeah, that required them to learn manners. Please, thank you. Open the door for a lady. Wear clean clothes. Look nice. And of course, people rebelled against that. Why should I have to cut my hair? Why should I have to wear the clothes you say I should wear? Why should I have to look like decent? I want to look scruffy. Well, I'll tell you what, I retired out of Disney. And when my wife went to Disney as a kid, they wore a dress, white gloves, a hat. The first time I went to Disney was on, I think, Disney's 5th anniversary. And my father and my grandfather wore suits. I remember wearing a short-sleeve white shirt with black pants and a black belt and Oxfords. That's what we wore to Disneyland. You don't throw trash out the car window. Dirty baby diapers. You didn't fling those out the window. You didn't throw trash in the street. You didn't paint on walls. You didn't paint on the walls of a building because the building didn't belong to you. That's why. You don't wreck other people's stuff just because you want to. But, you know, hey, we live in different times. Big empty apartment building in downtown Los Angeles. Nobody cares, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to paint graffiti on every floor of every story of like a 40 or 50-story building. It doesn't matter. The building didn't belong to them. Art or not. Picasso didn't run around the street painting on his neighbor's wall. Neither did Rembrandt. Michelangelo did, but he was asked to. They paid him to do it. You know, next time you're looking around the house and you see a pencil and a pad of paper sitting there. Just a pencil and a pad of paper. Hold them up. All you young whizzes out there, take that pad and that piece of paper and design a moon rocket or a Mars rocket on that paper with that pencil. Now, we'll let you have a ruler. No calculator. No calculator. Design your moonship. Calculating thrust and thrust vectors and orbital ballistics and trajectories between planets. Factor in gravitational anomalies and solar winds and all that crap. From here. Let's make it less complicated. Let's be like Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Don't design a spaceship. Design a massive ocean-going vessel. Or plot out a railway across a country using only a pencil and paper and a map. And do all the math in your head. So that train runs safely and smoothly on those rails. Or the ocean liner can leave New York and get to London and not run out of fuel. Or food. Or water. Do it all in your head. All this fancy-ass computer and calculator stuff is a product that has appeared in less than 100 years. Yeah, 200 years ago, people were sailing across oceans. When they were building the pyramids, one of the engineers for the Pharaoh didn't look at a smartwatch and enter some numbers on a calculator and get an answer. So you can piss, moan, and complain about the people of the past, and I didn't know Jack. Well, they knew Jack. And Jill. And everybody else. They knew a lot. And that's how we got here. Yeah, but Bill, in the 50s, cars only got 9 miles to the gallon because gas was so cheap and they didn't care. That's another fallacy. And here's how I know that. I've had, in my life, over 100 automobiles. And any of you people who really know me know that's true. And a 1956 DeSoto Adventurer. 341 Hemi with a 4-barrel. If I drove 60 miles an hour, I got 26 miles to the gallon. And a 1957 Chrysler Imperial with a 392 Hemi. And that car weighed 5,790 pounds. How do I know that? I weighed it on a truck scale where I used to work. And if I drove 65 miles an hour, if I kept my foot out of it, I could get between 21 and 23 miles to the gallon. Not 9, not 8, not 7. As a matter of fact, I think in the 1948 mobile run in DeSoto set a record of 48 miles to the gallon with a Hemi, 239 Hemi. And fluid drive. It's a damn fine cigar. I remember one time my wife and I were asleep in the bedroom. And this was before my daughter was married. She was still living at home. And on a Saturday morning, we were awakened by her laughing. She was in the family room watching television. She was laughing her ass off. So, of course, my wife goes, "What is she laughing at?" And we got up and went to the family room. Here's my daughter, right, teenager, watching Buck Privates with Abbott and Costello. And she is laughing her ass off. She's actually writing down the jokes she's hearing in that movie. And she looks at me and goes, "Dad, have you ever seen these guys? They're hilarious." Now think about this. When an entertainer's comedy can stretch across 60 some odd years and touch the inner soul of a young person and make them laugh with their jokes, that's talent. A lot of these stand-up comics you see today, is somebody be laughing at their jokes in 60, 70 years? I'm not going to name names, but I want you to think of a comic that in a century from today will be voted the greatest comic of the 21st century. You know what? There's a young lady. I've seen her shorts on YouTube. She's Mexican, and she does a pretty funny stand-up routine about her and her life and her husband, who's from Puerto Rico. She talks about the difference between people in different states and the difference between Puerto Ricans and Mexicans. And I've watched quite a bit of her work, and she is truly funny. I laugh every time I see her. And not one word of profanity escapes this woman's lips. And I think I know why. Because she has kids. And she's a mom. She's a mom and doesn't want her kids to see her that way. So she has to come up with a way to be funny without profanity, and she's highly successful. But all those great people that were alive in my lifetime that you're never going to get to see personally. Alice Cooper was talking in one of his interviews about, his years of performing. This is Alice Cooper. And they asked him what he thought was one of his best concerts. And he said that his best concert, his most memorable concert, was when he finished on stage and walked backstage to discover that Groucho Marx, Jack Benny, George Burns, and Gracie Allen had come to see him perform. He didn't care about how much money he made. He didn't care about the music. He didn't care about all the people in the audience. That was of minor importance, because those four people came to see him. And they were backstage wanting to meet him. Yeah. Think about that. Jack Benny, who can make people laugh by just saying, well. Groucho Marx, who had a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, and on the anniversary of the crash, I think in 1949, which was 20 years after the crash, he stopped trading on the floor because he sang a song at the stock exchange. He said, I probably caused a panic because all over the world for 4 or 5 minutes the ticker tape machines stopped printing because everybody was watching me sing. If you want to know more about these people, look them up. Look up Joan Benny's book called Sunday Night at 7. Read about Groucho Marx and Harpo and Chico and Zeppo. Read about the Three Stooges. Read about Abbott Costello. And that's another great thing. I personally knew Patty Andrews from the Andrews Sisters. Oh, what a treat. A company I used to work for did a charitable event every year, and we would do stuff for the homeless. And one of the people who was part of that event was Patty Andrews from the Andrews Sisters. And Casey Kasem and Jeannie Kasem. I got to know them pretty well. And she was a wonderful person. She was a wonderful person. Patty Andrews. And one of my grandmother's best friends was an older woman called Adelaide Lawson Gaylor, who was one of America's, she was a folk artist, pretty famous. And she would come to California and visit us, right? And she would, she took us out to lunch one day, and we had lunch with the playwright Arthur Miller. And then my friend Wally got to go to lunch with me and Adelaide, and we had lunch with Edith Head. Edith Head. Those were great days. And I'm not bragging because I don't talk about those things. It's not a brag. It's a fact. I got to see John Glenn on television. I got to watch all the Mercury spaceships take off. I got to watch the Gemini program. I got to watch the Apollo program. I remember hearing the news about Gus Grissom and White Grissom and Chaffee all dying in that capsule. I worked with a guy whose father was one of the engineers on that project. I got to watch them land on the moon. I remember when Apollo 13 had its problem. I remember the space shuttles exploding. All those things. All those things. Chuck Yeager was alive in my lifetime. Charles Lindbergh. Eddie Rickenbacker. Great aviation greats. As a matter of fact, I was buying some scrap metal from this guy right here in someplace down in Montebello, and we were the guy who owned the scrapyard. His name was Ray, and we struck up a conversation, and it turned out that he was one of the gentlemen that helped wheel the Spirit of St. Louis out of the hangar to help Lindbergh take off on that morning to fly the Atlantic. I met a guy who knew Charles Lindbergh. As a matter of fact, the reason that came up was because there was a picture on the wall in his office, and it said, "To Ray, from Lindy." In quotation marks, underneath was Charles Lindbergh. I remember my dad telling me about the time he went down to the field. They had an autograph day at Yankee Stadium, and he got to meet Joe DiMaggio and all those guys down there when he was a kid. And my mom was selected out of, she entered a contest in 1939 and entered a contest and got to work at the Girl Scout Pavilion at the 1939 New York World's Fair. And I have souvenirs from that she got. Yeah, I'm a pretty lucky guy. I talked to the man who was on duty in the Philippines, and he's the man who personally received and transcribed the surrender information from the Japanese when they surrendered. Met him. Met guys who fought their way across the Pacific. One of my best friend's father was in Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal and those places. My father-in-law was shot down over Europe in 1943 by the famous German ace Pips Priller, and spent the rest of the war in Stalingrad 3, the prison camp from the movie The Great Escape. He was one of the tunnel diggers. I got to meet men who flew 25 missions over Europe. I got to meet guys who ran up the beach at D-Day. I met guys who fought at Inchon. They're past now, and you're never going to see guys like that. And if you do, You need to stop and thank him. You need to shake their hand. Korean War veteran, World War II veteran. Stop and shake that guy's hand and say thank you. I said that before. You know, I'm a pretty lucky guy. And another way I'm lucky, I don't have a ton of followers, guys. You know that. But I'm grateful for everyone I have. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. Here I've been talking all this time and I forgot about Old Par. So let's get Old Par open. Oh, it's a screw top. I expected fancy-ass whiskey like this to have a cork. So let's give Old Par a try. Oh, you can smell the bagpipes. There you go. Ooh. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is a good whiskey. Oh, yes. You know what, I have, well, I'm going to say have a friend, because I've not been able to get information on her for a long time. But her name is Judy Patton. But her real maiden name is Judy Berg, the daughter of Billy Berg. He was a big band leader back in the 30s and 40s. He had 3 or 4 clubs in Hollywood in those days. And her mother was downsizing, moving to an assisted living place. So I was helping her and her mother clean out a garage. So we're throwing stuff in trash bags, and one of the things that hit the floor, and I picked it up, was a letter to her mother. And I popped it open and read it. Actually, the letter was to Billy Berg. Now, Judy's father had cancer. And she, anyway, the letter said, Dear Billy, I'm sorry to hear that your health is poor. He said, damn, I wish you'd told me earlier. So here's what I'm going to do for you, Billy. Send me all your medical bills, and I'll make them good. And don't worry, if and when something happens to you, I'm going to help take care of your family. The letter was signed by Jackie Gleason. Because Billy knew all those. Louis Armstrong, Fats Waller, Jackie Gleason, Bing Crosby. As a matter of fact, she had a record of a jazz session done at Billy Berg's club in Hollywood with it was Bing Crosby, Jimmy Durante, Louis Armstrong, Fats Waller, and Judy Garland, all performing at the same time at that club in Hollywood. It's to you, Judy. She married a gentleman named Jim Patton, who, from what I understand, is related to the Patton family, the General Patton's family, same family as San Marino. Anyway, the old par. Oh yeah, smell those bagpipes. Well, how long has this been? Oh, this is going to be a long one. 50 minutes. Well, I'm going to cut it short here, guys. 50 minutes is a long time. But it would be my longest video to date. So, here's for all you old-timers: Jack Benny, Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, George Burns, Gracie Allen, Patty Andrews, Judy Garland, Frances Langford, Betty Grable, Chuck Yeager, Charles Lindbergh, Jimmy Stewart, Audie Murphy, Alvin York, all you guys. John Glenn, to Ed White, Gus Grissom, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chaffee, I don't remember your first name. Jim Lovell, all you guys. Thanks for everything you did for us. Thank you. Thank you for preserving our freedoms and advancing science and entertaining us. And to the Walter Cronkites and Chet Huntleys and David Brinkleys and Edward R. Murrows and all you guys out there, thank you for being truthful, honest, and unbiased deliverers of the topical news of the day. It's for you guys. Like and subscribe. Click the little bell, wherever the little bell is going to be. And till next time. Later, Mater.
Oh, son of a gun. You thought I was going to say son of a bitch, didn't you?